You're listening to your favorite podcast about Flesh and Blood and its community. Welcome to Last Ditch Effort.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Last Ditch Effort podcast, your brand new Flesh and Blood podcast focusing on organized play, the competitive FAB scene, past, present, and future metagames, occasional gossip, and some crazy brews to help you meme your way through your armories up to Worlds. In today's episode, we'll quickly introduce ourselves, where we are from, where we play, what we play, why we play, and then we dive into what happened at Worlds, where we believe the current meta is, and what to play for Skirmish season. So, spoiler alert, the hero has 3 intellect. My name is Patrick, and I'm one half of the Last Ditch Effort podcast, with the other half being Maurice.
Hello, my name is Maurice. Talk a little bit about how we started. So I started playing Flesh and Blood with the Everfest set. We did like 1 or 2 drafts maybe before that. I really fell in love with the game. And then after that, I really started to play every week. When I started, I was still a student, so I was looking for decks that didn't cost too much money to build. So I didn't have a spring tunic yet, for example. So I decided to play Dash because Dash didn't need that. All you needed was Mechanologist cards. You didn't need those expensive generics. And ever since I've played Dash as my main, but now with the newest set, I started with Dash. I also started playing Dash.io. Bought all the stuff for Bolton, which I also love. Yeah. What about you, Patrick?
Yeah, so my name is Patrick. I'm playing FAB since September 2021, with a big break because I only played until January 22 and then stepped away from the game. The way I started playing was like after being not super happy with MTG anymore. A friend approached me and was like, "Hey, let's try out this new cool game." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And I started playing, but I lived a little bit out of the city and didn't make it to every armory and lost a little bit track of FAB until I started again in May 2022 when the same friend just sent me a screenshot of Iyslander that got spoiled before for Uprising. I was like, "Hey, I think you should come back to FAB because I think this is your new hero." So I started playing FAB in May 2022. So Uprising was my first real set, and basically one of my very first events ever was Uprising world premiere in Madrid. It was like a team blitz event. After there was also some sealed, but the main event was team blitz. And we actually made day 2, so I brought Kano, but wasn't able to test much before, and I got carried into day 2 by my two teammates who back then were like far better players than me, and I tracked the games and wrote down who won how much just to do some, I'm a data scientist, so I like to acquire data and to analyze data. And turns out my win rate was around 30%, and the other 2 players were 70% and high 60s. And I was like, "Okay, cool. Thanks for bringing me to day 2." And day 2, we didn't really convert because all of us started losing.
I was about to ask, did you cash your first event?
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. I think, but we barely missed it.
Okay.
But it was still funny because the games that I won, I needed to win too. So
yeah,
I can also say
so you
I won when it counted,
Yeah.
and when the other 2 had their games in the bag, I could just slack around. No, I was just a bad player back then. I think it's not a secret. I approached Kano a little bit maybe I was too convinced that I can learn Kano in a week and just dominate on an international stage, which is not how it works.
I think every new player has that experience the first time they play against Wizard. They're like, "Oh, this is broken. I want to play this," and then they look at the cards and you just get stomped game after game because it's a really hard hero to play.
Yeah, it took me way too long to realize that actually all the wizards card block 3, and that is one of the bigger strengths of the deck.
Yeah.
But it took me a while. Yeah, so then, as I said, I started playing Kano and then immediately switched to Iyslander and Blitz. It was all super casual back then, and I discovered that I actually like to play Fatigue. So I played a lot of Assassin, Arachne at first, and then some Uzuri. And yeah, I think I would still say I'm a wizard main, but I enjoy playing Fatigue a lot. I'm also an L1 judge, and usually answering to the judge calls at our local armory. You're also you have some judging skills.
Yeah, well,
right?
I took the L0 judge exam, but they basically just teach you how to play the game correctly. But yeah, I have like a little bit of insight into how the game works, maybe more so than if you're just a regular player. But that doesn't. I always thought that like doing the judge exam would help me become a better player. I don't know that it did. Maybe.
No, I honestly think it does. To be honest, I think every new player who wants to up their game should just go to the Judge Hub Discord and do the L0 test. I mean, you can. Yes. It doesn't even have a cooldown, right? You can just do it.
You can just do it. It's so easy and like really,
Yeah, you learn a lot. I think being a judge really helped me become a better player too. Not in the aspects that I expected it to be, to know like, oh, this and that interaction, it gives me an advantage, but more in a sense of how to play clean and how to communicate open and how to announce triggers and announce your pummels and things like this. So I think it helps a lot to have at least a look at the rules and what the judges are working with on a regular basis. So I think that's super cool or a good opportunity to up a game for new players.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the scene that we come from, like our local scene here in Zürich, Switzerland.
Yeah, sure. So we both play in Zurich, Switzerland, in the Kaboom comic shop, which we have an armory once a week on Tuesday evenings. So if someone is visiting Switzerland, feel free to come by. We have a Discord where you can chat to the people in advance, see what format it is. And I must say, it's like, to me, entering this local scene, local armory, a bit more than a year ago, felt amazing because it's a super welcoming atmosphere, and people are very, very welcoming and just the nicest people. Even though some of us can become quite competitive and are good players, but I think you've been around this store a little bit longer than me, no?
I have, yeah. I used to play Magic at this store, like, for over a decade ago. When I was still in high school here. And it's just like the store itself is really nice, and like the staff is extremely nice, very welcoming, but also the FAB community specifically has just been amazing. In the 2 years that I've played there, I don't think I've had a single bad interaction with anyone, and some of my like closest friends are even like at the store that I met at the store. So yeah, it's been absolutely amazing getting to join this community and getting to hang out with everyone at the store every week.
Yeah, I have a similar feeling. Like, for me, it's the same. It doesn't feel like you're competing in a game every week, but it feels like, hey, you go there, you hang out with some friends, and you jam some games.
It really has become this third place that James White always talks about, right?
Yeah. Here for sure, like 100%. FAB as James White intended, and it really is a local community, and players help each other out. And yeah, sometimes like before an event, you're like, someone is, hey, I want to draft this weekend, and then you just meet in the store, or you meet with the same people somewhere else if there's another event at the store, and you just jam games, and it's like, you hang out with friends. It's really like this. I mean, we're recording this on a Tuesday, and we have an armory in a few hours, and I'm already excited to go. Like it's I'm looking for, even though I don't know what I'm playing yet. But it's I think it's a cool place to come together, champ some games, have a good time with friends every week. Definitely a highlight.
So that all sounds very good feels and vibes and hugging, but actually the armory is very competitive at our scene. We have very good players. At our national championship this year, 7 of the top 8 were from our store, which, I mean, there's not that many stores all around Switzerland. How many would you say? Maybe 10 local armories or so?
Yeah, and I think a very active scenes. It's hard to tell from like the German speaking part of Switzerland to see what's going on in like the French speaking part or in the Italian speaking part. But I think there are between 5 and 10 bigger armories every week. Throughout Switzerland, and those are usually the people that you then meet at Swiss national championships. So in the greater Zurich area, there is like the Winterthur Armory, so that's like a 20-minute train ride from here. There is a Zurich Armory, then there is
I was talking to some players from at a calling, and they were saying like, oh, like, how far do you travel to your armory? And I was like, oh, I have 2 armories within 20 minutes of my home. And they were like, oh, I drive an hour and a half to get to my armory, which I thought was insane. So we were very lucky to have so many options and so many good stores as well. Like, all the stores are
the owners are super nice of all the stores, and just the community is, I think the Switzerland FAB community is amazing.
Like, we're spoiled for choice almost. Right?
Yeah, that is true. But as you mentioned, we do have quite the competitive scene here. So you said like this year the Switzerland national championship was like basically an armory, and we have I think there was a deck tech video even recently from Dario Veneri, who's one of our locals who made Worlds Top 16 on Dash.io. Cool video, definitely check it out. I think the title of the video is "You Play Dash.io Wrong." I think it's the right title because he showed to be successful without maximum velocities. We can talk about this later. We have many people who made like Worlds Day 2. We have Battle Hardened, Calling, top 8s, top 2s, and those are the people who we compete with every
single week, right? There's all these great players, and then there's you and me who just play whatever we feel like on the day. And
exactly. Yeah, I said I don't know what I'm playing. So we have a CC armory tonight, and I'm looking at my decks that are like sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at Dromai, and I'm not playing Dromai into, I don't know, there will be 4 Dash.ios today, I think, or something like this. Then I look at Phi. I'm like, okay, I could play Phi. But actually, I think I'll bring the Spice again today. And just because Iyslander did LL, I'll bring my main man, Kano, back. But yeah, let's see.
Everybody took out their AB, so now Kano is back in the game. Kano's back on the menu.
I texted one of our locals yesterday because we were like, oh, what are we going to play? We're going to play new decks. And I told him just to bring AB in case I decide to play Kano. So, yeah. Our locals can be quite competitive. And I was approached by a player who, like a year ago, another armory in Switzerland, they were known for being super competitive in CC. And they had very good players. And they asked me, like, hey, what do you think about growing your local community with having so many competitive players? Like, do you think it can hurt your local community, or what do you do to still be inclusive of new players and grow your local community? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I definitely see the issue because nobody has fun just getting smashed every single week, right? So you show up to, let's say, 3 armories and you go 0-9. That's not a great experience in in any game. I do, however, think that it is very important that these better players take a bit of a community building role as well. And I think ours do. I think we have a very a good community when it comes to lending people decks or lending them cards that they're looking for their decks. So nobody feels like they're being kind of shut out because they are not willing to spend like thousands on the most recent like deck, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think it's sort of a confirmation bias, because the players that will stick with your local scene, or that will keep coming back, are the one that you are successfully including. So the people that are happy with how it is going. But usually we talk to the newer players, right, before even we start playing, and show them like our decks, and this is the way my deck will try to win. In the case of Fi, it's just like beating you. But whenever I play Kano into someone who's not experienced against wizards, I give them a playset of Null Rune, which I always keep a spare playset. It's like, okay, you have to AB this and this, because otherwise damage multiplies, and it's a combo deck and things like this. And I think this is super nice. Like, we meet before the armories usually to introduce new players to certain decks. We as you mentioned, borrow them decks if they want to try something out. And I think this really helps. And the fact that there are some quite competitive players in our local scene, I think, is not standing in the way of growing your local community.
No, I don't think so. I think that it's the most important fact is that, or the most important part is that these competitive players, or the good players, are also mindful of including the newer ones in the armory. Like, don't just like smash your new players and then never like talk to them about the game or how they're like want to progress.
3 turns in a row dominated Crippling Crush, and you never see them again. Like, yeah. I think we found a way, because we all started in the same environment, and we all started from not knowing the game, right? We all had to start somewhere.
We were all there at some point, right?
Exactly. Except I think there are a few players who played FAB even before it existed, I feel like. So I think there are some day ones FAB players out there. At least it feels like this. I think that it's not mutually exclusive to have a competitive scene and grow your community. With also recently we had more and more like casual play events, UPF events, and things like this. So I think that helps. If you want to welcome new players, you will find a way. And if you want to grow your community, you will find your way. And it helps if you have successful players. People will start reading about them. People will start reading about the game. And this actually might help grow your local community even further.
Yeah. I also think it's like a really cool feeling to know, like, if you then end up winning against one of these like better players, and like if you stick with the game, you will get better and it will happen. Then you can say, wow, I just beat like the national champion. I just beat like top 8 competitors. I just beat like some of the best in the country or in the world even, right?
Yeah.
So that feels really good, and it motivates.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. Like, winning against those players is like, yes, you accomplished something in your week. Like, it's funny. Like, coming home and then someone asked like, oh, how did it go? And I'm like, yeah, I just beat the Swiss national champion. And like, woo! So are you now the official champion? I was like, no, it's not boxing. That's not how it works.
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah.
But.
Also, to add to this, I think our local meta is super diverse too. Like, I think most of the heroes are represented. People love their specialization heroes. Like, we have a Riptide who was second place in our RPQ, almost won RPQ, and just surprise Riptide. And I was judging that event, and I was sitting there like, Uzuri Riptide finals, and I'm like, it's so cool to be part of this.
Yeah,
it's like
surreal.
So nice in the meta where people were.
In the Lexi meta was that, right?
Yeah, I think Lexi was still legal, and people were like, stale meta or whatever, and then we have a Riptide Uzuri final, and I'm just sitting there enjoying like being part of the game, being part of the community, being part of the culture. It's super nice.
Yeah. So let's get into some news.
Yep. Let's do that.
You want to start out with the Armory promos for December?
Yeah.
Those really nice Christmas baubles are back, baby.
Yes, Christmas baubles are back, baby. So yeah,
this time only in rainbow foil though.
Yeah, it feels a little bit sad, right? I remember like having I think it was last year, right? Having the correct Christmas bauble in cold foil. I think, was it an Armory promo back? I don't actually fully remember. Yeah, I think it was also the shitty Xmas present card with Azalea and the 2 socks. And I remember like it was the only month where I really, really wanted the playmat. And I really, really wanted to get the shitty Xmas present promos, and I think I have 4 or 5 of that. I have two cold foil baubles, and I'm so happy because like you can just throw them in your UPF deck now, and it's just like so much swag. And for the same reason, I will not be playing much in December because I will be traveling. But this one event I'll play, I really hope I'll get the Squizzy and Floof. Otherwise, I have to buy a display or something, because I think it's a first off that you get a gift with purchase, that they have this gift with purchase promo.
Yeah, at least in Europe, I believe they already had this buy a box promo with select stores in the US, if I'm not wrong. But I do think it's really nice that they kind of expanded or that they give people the option to just like support your local store, buy something maybe for Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
And get this special promo with it.
Buy a Welcome to Wrath Alpha display, get a Rainbow Foil Squizzy and Floof for your loved ones.
The important Squizzy and Floof card with your Alpha display, that's right.
Yeah, honestly, like, I really want the Squizzy and Floof for UPF. I never really liked the idea of UPF because, like, I remember I have some bad Commander memories, like, back in the Magic days. It's like Commander was always very competitive. There was a lot of arguing, but I played UPF I think 3 times now, and every single time like we had a blast. Yeah. Which the local community is a big factor of, right? But it's hilarious. Yeah. UPF is so much fun.
It's really fun. Yeah, we played the Professor set like once or twice, the Round the Table, and even with like very competitive minded players, it's not a very competitive format. Like, I feel like it's different from Commander in the sense that like people do not like infinite combo you, or like, kind of I feel like there's less bullshit going on around the table.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's less degenerate.
Yes, it's less degenerate.
It really is social, right? I remember the last UPF event, I brought Data Doll, and I thought, haha, it's a meme. And the deck surprised me so much that actually we started brewing with it. And later we'll have our crazy brew segment, and we'll talk a little bit about Data Doll this skirmish season. But yeah, Squizzy and Floof, super cool. I wonder what's this big question mark playmat. So there is a Squizzy and Floof playmat, and there is one surprise playmat. So let's see what that will be. But I also like the idea of getting like the rainbow foil Squizzy and Floof as a buy
the most
promo.
Important question: which one is Squizzy and which one is Floof?
Yeah, judging by the beard, I think the person. I'm not assuming any genders. I think the person must be Floof, right?
The person is Floof. But I feel like the dog is Floof.
Yeah, in my head, the person is Floof.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm sure it will get confirmed at some point which one's Squizzy and which one's Floof.
Or maybe the Nutcracker is Squizzy and the dog is Floof.
Okay.
And it's just...
And the person is just Santa Claus.
It's just Santa Claus, yeah. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah.
All right, let's move on from the controversial topics here.
Exactly. Who's Squizzy? Who's Floof? 25 minutes in.
And move into some heavy hitter news.
Yup. Let's do that. So yeah, heavy hitters will be the next FAB set, which will officially release on February 2nd. But there is this cool world premiere event on January 19th, and preview season starts January 17th, which means I think there have been a few spoilers, but actually I read that it's maybe the next controversial topic, that preview season starts 2 days before world premiere.
Before the set release. Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I personally actually think that's really awesome, especially for the people who get to play the world premiere, right? Because one of the things that I really love whenever a new set comes out is just sitting down and like drafting with nobody at the table knowing what the cards do, or just like playing with it always feels like almost a completely new game, especially in Flesh and Blood, because there's so little heuristics to go off when you like evaluate a card. That I think it's really cool if like everybody is kind of on the same playing field, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I remember that there was this it was a little bit controversial when I think there was an online draft thing where people would practice Bright Light's draft a week or weeks before the set released.
The pre-release,
and they would jam like drafts before the pre-release. They would play seals, they would play drafts, and I come to my pre-release and I don't know what is going on. I read a few cards, I knew what the heroes were doing, but yeah, it's wild. And I think if you can prevent that with things like this, right? If you have 2 days, okay, you can still prepare within 2 days.
Yeah, but I think that's like the thing. I think if you want kind of the best of both worlds, right? Like you want the preview season because it's hype and it's exciting, but you also want people to be able to enjoy their pre-release, or in this case even the world premiere event, right? Like that's even more, people fly out to go play the world premiere event or the calling in Queenstown. They like travel the world to go play at this like new set in this like beautiful place. And then it would be really disappointing if like half the players that show up have already had, a week of practice before you had the chance to really play. So I think this is actually a really good way of doing it. I hope we'll see how it goes, but I hope this becomes a more established way of product releases.
Yeah, I like it too. I actually really, really do like this. So I think the hype will still be up, but just having people prepare drafting, playing sealed with like printed out bulk commons and rares, I think you can prevent this a little bit and make this a super cool, fresh format for everyone. And then it's really about how fast are you to adapt, how good are you in evaluating cards, and I think that's super cool, super unique. I would love to be there, but yeah, maybe next time. So I think super cool. Let's have a look about some of the new mechanics. Like there is wager, which is basically if your attack hits, you create a gold. Otherwise, your opponent creates it. If you wager,
if your attack hits, something happens, right? Yeah. They're spoiled 2 cards. One of them makes a vigor token, which is also a new token, and the other one makes a gold token, which we already know.
Yeah. Vigor was in the social play professor thing.
You're right. Yeah.
And so far, we have seen the wager as a may. Right, so it's always like when you do something, like when you attack, this attack gets, in this example, +3, and when it attacks, you may wager. So it's a May trigger, which I think is good. You still get the buff, you still get an effect, and if you feel confident that you will hit, then you can wager. And if your opponent has a direct in arsenal and can just block it out, oh, they get something for blocking out. I really like the mini game, the game within a game. It's like you can stockpile on gold because your opponent is being an aggressive wagerer.
So do you think we're finally back into the era of seeing good defense reactions?
That's that's a very good question. I think
what's the chance we're gonna see a block 4 defense reaction in this set?
Or maybe a 1-cost block 4 defense reaction. But yeah, I like mechanics like this that are a little bit okay. You have to know your deck. You have to know your opponent's deck. I really like that. If you reward game knowledge and in-depth understanding of, you never know if your next attack will hit. But if you play Fatigue Ultim, you know that your attack will most likely not hit, and then I wouldn't wager, even though the old man is LL'd now. But you see where I'm going. So
I do, yeah.
It would be cool. Would be cool to see a 0-cost 4 block. But if they print another very good 0-cost 4 block D-React with upside, then I'm a little bit afraid that I'm a Fatigue player, right? So then immediately it would be an auto include, like Sink Below and Fate Foreseen. And then, how do you counter that? I mean, there have been cards like Burdens.
Command and Conquer.
Or Burdens of the Past, where like defense reactions can't be played. Things like this then go up in value to include them in your deck. But I wouldn't have a big problem with it. We'll see. I like the Firewall, for example, from Bright Lights.
Yeah,
I think
it's
an amazing...
the block type cards where they still are 0 for 4, but not a defense reaction.
Yeah, you can't arsenal them. It does have a downside. You IP yourself sometimes. So I like that a lot too, where it comes... Being a defensive deck should come with a cost. Or with a risk. I think that is good, because I mean, just having 3 remembrances in every sideboard to counter some Fatigue decks is fine. It's just 3 sideboard slots. But there should also be other ways to counter that. And if they keep printing super nice defense reactions from like FAB 1.0 level, then then you just make those decks better. Which is, I think, being a defensive deck is a very valid strategy and a successful strategy. We've seen this a lot in the past.
So let's talk about a new ability that would prevent people from playing just defense reactions, which is Clash.
Boom! What a segue! I love it.
So Clash works. From what I understand, every time you clash, both heroes reveal the top card of their deck, and then whoever has more attack power wins the clash. So, and then they get, as far as I can tell, only tokens, but maybe another effect, right?
Yeah. So far, we have only seen like the tokens. There is Test of Agility, Test of Strength. I actually also like the flavor.
They're both block cards, so these cards both happen when you block.
Yeah. You can't block with them from Arsenal, except if we would get an errata. But I don't think there will be like a rule change. So you have to block with them from hand, and they are 4 blocks, zero or no cost 4 blocks. And I think some decks will really want those, especially, for example, a defensive Brute or a defensive Guardian. I can see that where you really want you have a high density of 6 attacks in your deck. And you are rewarded with getting a gold token for this. So that's super nice. I think that is an update over some, maybe even some defense reactions in some Guardian decks that want to care about gold, or we don't know what an agility token is yet, I think. But this gold token,
isn't the agility one that I think it pops at the start of your turn and gives your next attack go again?
It's like a bad quicken.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a quicken, but it always pops at the start of your turn, and it just happens to the first attack.
Yeah.
That you play.
Yeah, makes sense then that it's also a brute warrior, right? Because those are like brute or conditional go again in a way are things we have seen in brute and warrior in the past. So I think it makes sense. There will probably there is no wizard, so maybe there is no test of wisdom or intellect. Maybe there is, I don't know, a test of wisdom. But yeah, we'll see. I like both mechanics a lot actually, and I see them being creating very fun games in limited.
Yeah. It also feels like very back to the roots in a sort of way. Like I remember Welcome to Wraith drafting was very much about like if you drafted brute, like make sure you have enough 6 attacks, and if you drafted warrior, like make sure you got enough go again. This type of
fundamentals,
kind of,
yeah. It's just like
fundamental. Less about like I'll just like play like 3 items in a turn and like on hit they kill you, and more so like I have to block with 2 cards, come back with you with 1 card, like really back to the roots kind of Flesh and Blood.
Yeah, and that's the vibe I get from the set, right?
Yeah,
it's called heavy hitters.
Definitely.
Like you hit and you get hit, and you block and you hit back, and I think that's super super cool. And I believe that LSS will or has designed the set very well. I personally think Bright Lights was one of the best draft, or is one of the best draft environments I've ever seen in any TCG. And I've been saying this from day one, and there was always this like, oh, just force fatigue Teklo crowd. And I think they have been proven wrong in a way by the Worlds
I think
results.
Especially after seeing Worlds, seeing Yuki Lee Bender go, she went 6-0, right, with Dash, if I remember correctly. I think it proves that it wasn't about just forcing, and it was really about understanding your deck, understanding the cards, understanding the matchup.
Exactly. And that shows you like how some people really, they live in their echo chambers, right? If your local armory in a draft, you have 5 Teklos at the table, and they always win, then of course you will think Teklo is OP. But in our armories, I remember like early drafts already, like there was one time though, in an 8-player pod, there was 1 Teklo at the table in an 8-player pod.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay, yeah. And did you win?
I did, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. But I remember another time where there was 1 Teklo in the pod and he lost to a Dash.io. And so I think we learned, or we knew quite early that, oh, there is more to this than just blocking. And I think many of us tried fatiguing Teklo once with more or less being successful. So I think Bright Lights is this draft set where if you want to consistently build a 2-1 deck, you can come with a plan, execute this plan, and you will be able to have a very consistent 2-1 deck. But if you want the 3-0 deck in your draft pot, you have to adapt. Okay, you can always be lucky, sure. But you have to adapt and draft smart. And it's really rewarded understanding
what the signals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Really understand like how your pot is drafting is like one of them. In this set more important than I would think any other set we've seen so far, because it's only one class, right? Like back in, let's say, Outsiders, if you started out as Ranger, but like Ranger was not open, you kind of automatically got pushed into one of the other classes because you just wouldn't see any Ranger cards, so you'd automatically start picking something else.
Yeah, so I think it's one of the best designed limited formats. I mean, we could even have a special episode, like a farewell Bright Lights episode in the future.
So let's talk about the new limited format in Heavy Hitters, the Ultimate Pit Fight Draft. Are you excited for that at all?
Yeah, I can see it being fun. The thing with Ultimate Pit Fight is like I once was in a UPF game and with these round the table precons. And as soon as the professor had his second Evo equipped, he was like the arch enemy. Everyone targeted him. So he was targeted from two sides. The other people were like being peaceful, building their copper tokens, helping the other twos out. And I think this could potentially happen in a UPF draft format too. So in a competitive environment, I wouldn't think this is ideal. But in like 2-4 person UPF pods, I think it just adds another layer of fun in these casual formats. And I think it's
and honestly,
it's cool.
I personally love the idea of having the option to do this. Of course, you always have the option to do this, right? Like, it's not that you couldn't have done an Ultimate Pit Fight draft before heavy hitters. But I think the fact that they have cards in there that specifically support this format will be very fun. And I think it's like one of the best experiences you can have in Flesh and Blood. Is like, let's say you go to an event, you play like super competitively CC, and then you win some packs at the end of the event, right? And then one of the best things is just sitting together with everyone that got their packs and ripping them open and playing like a draft. I think that is like incredibly fun. And if you can do an Ultimate Pit Fight draft, even better. Like, there's no stakes, right? There's not anything to win, nothing on the line, just vibes.
Yeah, just become the champion of the arena.
Exactly. Those are some of the best experiences I've had in card gaming in general.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think this will help.
I think every format that they add, every opportunity they add to do this is good for the game. Yeah.
Okay, so after seeing 5 heavy hitters preview cards and a little bit of information, we're already convinced that it is good for the game. It's good. It shows our trust in LSS. Yeah, cool. Yep. So I think that is heavy hitters. Hopefully next episode we know a little bit more about the heroes. I mean, probably most of you have seen the new Kasai. We will not go into detail here yet. The Arachne specification is, I think, bonkers, but we will discuss that at a different occasion, I think, too, because we're running long already. So one thing that has happened, was it last weekend? Worlds?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Yeah, last weekend was Worlds. And I think everyone was surprised by how Worlds, or most of the people were surprised by how Worlds went. First of all, that like Iyslander had such a big share of the meta. I think also it was a good decision to bring Iyslander into this specific Dromai meta, because there are some Dromai lists that don't run any blue. And if you just get Channel Lake Frigid and the Channel Lake Frigid sticks around for 3 turns, you have a problem. So, and Iyslander just attacked this. Iyslander historically well positioned into Guardian. And I was following Twitter. There were 20 people on my feed that said they will bring Kano, or that they will not bring AB. And it's like, it's always it's fun to see those mini games. And I think ultimately that would have convinced me to play Iyslander at the event too. Because if you read that, and people changing decks a lot and things like this, if you are an experienced Iyslander player, you know what you're doing, you know the other decks, you can disrupt any deck, and you can, just by playing consistently, you can just get an edge over people that change their deck last minute to Dash.io.
Yeah,
I think your ninja matchups are good, but yet Fi takes it home.
Let's talk about the big upset I want to say at this Worlds, which was FAB
Taking
Rising
it
Rebellion.
home. Yeah, FAB rising to the top of the world championship. And it's funny because I think 2 weeks before Worlds at our armory, I played FAB. And I mean, I'm not playing a FAB deck that is similar to the one that the world champion had. I play like 3 Phoenix Flames, a full playset of Phoenix Form, red tomes and things like this. But we thought there was a deck, right? It felt very nice. My only loss was to a Zalea that like just I couldn't do anything about because I don't play enough deer reacts and things like this. But it still felt like if I get a good turn, I could win. So it's funny that we played FAB a little bit and we're like, oh, deck is actually good. But I would have
we were talking and we both agreed that FAB would be a good pick for this World's meta. But I think neither of us could like nail it down why it was specifically. We could just both like playing the deck just felt good in a way. It felt like you always had options. It felt you had, like you could just win out of nowhere, kind of.
Yeah, you're good.
But also you could switch into this more defensive play style with the Kodachis and like the 3-block cards, right?
Yeah, and you have game into Dromai, even though some Dromais think they are favored, like it's a classic. I think I would call it like a 70-70. Yeah, you have game into Bravo. You have game. I think there is not a very bad matchup for FAB from my how I perceive it, except Iyslander. So
exactly, that's the one thing I would have said. Iyslander would be your worst matchup.
Yeah, the moment I see the meta breakdown and I see the FABs, I'm like, sad people playing FAB. Because like everyone who brought FAB will eventually run into Icelanders. And after Yuki's day one, I was like, for me, Yuki already won the event. I was like, okay, this is like the matchup spread in top 8. She's favored. Like Yuki, amazing limited player. I'm like, okay, Yuki will finally take it home, get rewarded for all the hard work. And then FAB wins it of all decks in this top 8. And I was so surprised. And I still don't have an explanation, to be honest.
I think it was just a mix of absolutely insane draws. Like really just had everything he needed at the exact moment he needed it. Like if he takes his foot off the gas, like even one turn, like the game goes to Yuki, I believe.
Yeah, that's my feeling. It's just like running hot. You can run hot at tournaments. It's a thing. It's a thing I have experienced myself.
Yeah, that's the thing that I also think is one of FAB's strengths, right? Like if you can miss and then like you don't do much. Like I have had these games where you just Kodachi like for 3 turns in a row, but you can also run hot and then there's no. Yeah, as we saw, like you almost cannot be stopped, right? And I think Dash.io has like a similar feeling actually, that you can have these turns where it's just you do 36 damage and it's impossible to stop, but then there's also turns where you draw 4 items and you're like doing nothing for a turn, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. There is some variance, but if you run hot at an event with a deck that can dish out so much damage, and actually I've like his FAB deck felt super consistent watching it, but looking at the deck list, I was like, okay. I was impressed that it performed so well that he managed to play it so consistently. So that's like a big respect to him for piloting the deck so well and making the right decisions in the spots where it counted. So yeah, well deserved. But I agree also
congratulations to Alexandros Argiriou.
Yeah.
Probably butchered his name, but yeah, definitely an amazing event to watch in general.
Yeah, perfect. The limited portion, like I enjoyed watching every limited game. I enjoyed watching every CC game. Coverage great, except the microphone issue in the beginning. But okay, things like this happen. But yeah, you mentioned Dash.io, and I think after seeing at the week before at the Battle Hard and seeing the performance of the Dash.io with max velocity, like the quite aggressive list performed so well, I think I expected more people to bring Dash.io and to perform well with Dash.io. But then again, seeing Iyslander, I was like not sure if you can keep the pressure up with channel lakes around and things like this. Your items of the top cost to everything is just text. You do have Techno cores, you run enough blues, things like this. Okay, but I wasn't sure. And Dario, I think Dario Veneri, local player here. He played this Dash.io list without maximum velocities and with bias updates instead. And there is a full deck tech on the Tales of Alex YouTube. And for everyone who's interested in the deck and interested in why Dario chose the deck and how to pilot it, it's really a masterclass in a deck tech, the interview. I think that's super cool for the people who want to pick up the deck. It goes quite long, it goes quite deep. I think it's a good resource for people who want to play Dash.io.
So let's talk a little bit about how, well, now with all these aggro decks and Iyslander gone, are we just gonna see like a full aggro meta, no defensive decks at all? What do you think?
So I believe that Fi now after Worlds is, after Iyslander LLing, is the deck to beat. I'm convinced that it is the deck to beat for a few reasons. I think one of the reasons is Fi, especially Kodachi Fi, is good into fatigue strategies. And I think fatigue can be good against some aggro decks, can be good into those very, very deck-intensive aggro decks, like Boost Dash, for example, or decks that don't have a very good weapon for the late game and things like this. And Fi brings this, especially with the Kodachis, like it threatens on-hits every turn. You have to take damage in order to block big on-hits and things like this. So that's one reason why I think Fi is well positioned. It can dish out a lot of damage. It can clear the dragons. It has game into most of the decks. There are issues with, for example, if you get Reddit in the Ledger every turn or 3 turns in a row, Azalea can really beat you. And I think Bravo, an aggressive Bravo, can also just beat you because you do have some item blocks, yes, but you don't have the dash or mechanologist level item blocks available with like block 3s, block 2s, temper equipment and things like this. So I think if you run into a Bravo that draws well, you will have a hard time. Also, there is no more Iyslander, so the Bravos, I feel like the Bravos don't really have a horrible
natural enemies in the field.
A horrible matchup anymore, except maybe Kano. And of course,
I think Dromai is probably not great for you either.
Yeah, that's a 90-90. I think that's the classic of the 90-90 matchup. Like I think every Dromai player I talk to says they're favored into Bravo, and every Bravo player says they're favored into Dromai. And whenever I play the Bravo Dromai matchup, I believe that the deck I'm playing is not favored into the other deck. So the classic 10-10. But yeah, so Bravo, I think, does not really have a natural counter currently in the meta, except Kano. When I sit down at a table and I play against the Bravo, and I'm on Kano, I'm very happy. Because I play for second cycle, I play my D-reacts, and then you just kill them. Or you see they run AB1 halfway through the deck, they haven't played Respite or any prevention effect, and they play quite aggressive. You know they're not holding on to hands, and you know, okay, you can just combo them, you can just combo them. So I think Kano, with Fi being on top, and Bravo, Azalea being up there with him, I think actually that Kano is not the worst pick in the current meta. I think it's a sleeper. It's an underdog because it can explode.
Yeah, but doesn't every Kano player think Kano's a sleeper?
No,
all the time.
Yeah, that is true. That's true.
Every meta Kano is a sleeper.
Every meta Kano is a sleeper. That is true. Maybe you just disarmed all the Kano players right now. But I think we've seen in the past over and over again that if the meta changes, people try out things, there's maybe one deck that people think is the deck to beat, people will start over-preparing and overboarding for the Fi matchup or for the Bravo matchup, whatever. And then they will start cutting AB. And people, I see from my testing on Talishar, I don't know, since Iyslander LL, I feel like, okay, I can't prove it, but I feel like people are cutting on blues. If people cut on blues, cut on their respites, and cut on their AB, I mean, there is one deck that preys on that, and that is Kano. But yeah, I feel like those are the decks to beat. Dash.io, I feel like has some potential too. But to me, it's very hard to say where it fits in the current meta. Because is it a better aggro deck than Fi?
I have played it a couple of times as Dash.io, and I would say it's definitely... I don't think you're favored, but I think you have like a good match. Like you have a decent chance against Fi. I don't think it's a bad matchup, because you can play these defensive items that help you against the Kodachis, that really, like, you can kind of mitigate the threat from the mask triggers, right? With these
with the dissolution shields,
dissolving shields, or exactly.
Yeah.
And again, like Fi doesn't like to block so much, so all of your grenades are live at any time, so you can also dish out like quite a lot of damage.
I have to ask you, like, now I talked about Kano a lot, but what about Boltyn? Like, you know your Boltyn. You've won some armories on Boltyn. You know how to pilot the deck. What about Boltyn? I feel like Boltyn should be positioned well. Boltyn has life gain. Boltyn has combo potential. Boltyn can block. You even can run and play the X if you want to. Like,
no, I think so too. I think Boltyn might be a very good pick into the upcoming meta. Definitely the Dusk Till Dawn stuff made his deck run way more smoothly than it did before that, right? And like your scariest matchup, which was Iyslander, is gone, right? So I feel like you still have some issues into fatigue decks. If you are not like playing the combo version, especially, I feel like in a combo Boltyn, you can just set up, and then you can combo them, which I think is enough to get out of the kind of fatigue cycle.
I mean, getting
is also
double frailty trapped on your Luminaris turn must feel very bad. But
yes, yeah. That's the thing, right? Like, I think I would play the combo version into like a fatigue Dory, for example, or like if, but everything that can give you frailty tokens, don't play the combo version. It's way too scary. Just play Raiden.
Yeah, I think what we see in FAB over and over again, no matter what meta we are in, if you know how to play your hero, and if you know how to play into all the matchups, and if you know what your opponents are trying to do in every matchup, you will do well.
All right, let's end our show on something a little spicy, a little crazy.
Ooh, yeah.
Let's give people a deck that they could play in the upcoming Skirmish season, or the running Skirmish season, actually. As we are recording this, it is in full swing. And Kano and Kasai already achieved Living Legend status. Jane went very recently. So what do you think? What should people play this skirmish season?
So honestly, I think the deck to beat at the moment is Data Doll. If you want to win your skirmish, you should bring Data Doll. And some people may think it's a meme. Some people think it's a psyop, but I will bring Data Doll to our next skirmish, to our Blitz skirmish, and you will bring Data Doll to our Blitz skirmish.
So will I, yeah.
And the more I play the current version of this deck, the more I'm convinced. Okay, so the deck link will be posted below in the show notes, and I think it's let's call it a classic Data Doll deck where you try to play a boost card at the beginning of your combat chain. You boost away something, that something ideally being an item that then immediately comes into play. Then you activate Foundry Heart, ideally banishing 2 more items, and then using your last resources to either attack with your pistol or play another attack. So the Data Doll deck is similar to, I think, what I've recently seen more and more Data Doll deck techs popping up here and there. But this one is a little bit, I would call it like a pivot deck. So depending on the game plan, you have different sideboard options. You run this main deck. Let's go through the main deck items first. So I think the Adaptive Plating is one of the best items you can run. And I even considered running 2 Adaptive Platings, one in the arms. One of the best equipments. One in the arm slot that I always play. I always play Adaptive Plating in the arm slot. And then I considered running one in the leg slot, but I decided that it's not needed at the moment. So if I would expect a super aggressive meta, I would probably run an Adaptive Plating in the legs. Instead, I run we run Achilles Accelerator at the moment, just to give you this extra action point that can sometimes bail you out of weird situations. We'll go over some interactions in a bit. Classic Crown of Providence, which is, I think, one of the cards that keeps the deck together, to be honest. Teklo Foundry Heart, you can't play this deck without Teklo Foundry Heart.
You need those 2 banishes to get more items into play, and also just abusing like the resources that you get from it is also excellent.
Yeah. And then good old Teklo Plasma Pistol, because you can use extra action points and extra resources to just shoot 2 damage. Do you want to go over the main deck items?
Yeah, sure. So we have 2 red boom grenades, 2 yellow boom grenades, mostly for extra damage. Like, it's just insane how often this card is relevant in Blitz specifically. Because 4 damage is just so much damage. Like, it's a fifth of your life total. Like, the important part here is that we run 2 outpace, which cannot be defended by equipment, and a lot of decks rely on the good equipment blocks to stay in the game long enough.
Yeah, and if you look at the attacks, like, right, there is Dumpster Dive, 4 to 5 power. There is Fender Bender, 4 plus X, where X is the equipment. You have Twin Drives, 5 power. You have Zipper 8s, 5 power. You have 0s to 64 power. It's like they all ask for 2 cards to be blocked if there is a boom grenade out. And then the boom grenade is still there. Like, if you banish the boom grenade of the boost or of the Teklo Foundry Heart, you never play them. Like,
yeah, you try to never play them. Sometimes you don't have an option.
Yeah, but then your opponent has to block with 2 cards if they don't want to give you free 4 damage. And then the next turn, it's still around if you didn't crank it or if you have a Plasma mainline out. So you're asking for their hand if you manage to attack with 2 cards. And if a Teklo Pounder is out, so we run also 2 Teklo Pounders, just because it's a super nice card that gives you a lot of value throughout the game. It's a blue. So yeah, everything is a breakpoint that requests 2 to 3 cards. So if you manage to trade basically a card for 2 to 3 cards every single turn and still manage to get some pistol shots in, like you win the value. Yeah.
That's the first part of the deck is just really aggressive. The other thing is if they do not block your attacks, you just kill them in 2 turns. The deck is so consistent at presenting 20 damage that if they do not like block you, you just kill them way faster than they can kill you in most cases, with the exception of maybe a Rhinar, but we'll get to that. No. So the other side of this deck that really, to me, makes this like a viable deck in this skirmish season is the defensive items, because I feel like a lot of decks can present a lot of damage in like a short in a few turns, right? So you have Rhinar, you have the ninjas like Fi that can present like a lot of damage as well. But they always have to choose between blocking and attacking, whereas Datadol can just as well keep the pressure up, just keep attacking, and put this defensive items like Dissolving Shield or Mini Force Field or even Dissipation Shield just into play, and it's like a free card. It's so much value to put a Mini Force Field or a Dissolution Shield or even both into play that it just swings the tempo right back in your favor. So then your opponent has to decide if they basically want to block your entire attack, like your entire turn, to not take damage from the boom grenade, or they just take it and try to come back for more, but then you have these defensive items that they cannot get through, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think those defensive items that they printed in Bright Lights really put together the deck right now, because they're not only defensive items, they're also usually can net you an action point that is additional to damage if you have the resources to pay into pistol. So like usually what you want to see is you want to banish an item when you boost. So let's say you attack with whatever, let's say an outpace, and you boost a red boom grenade. You don't crank it, right? They have to give you 2 cards. Then you activate your Teklo Foundry Heart and you banish a mini force field and let's say an attack. So just having this one red mini force field in the zone, in the arena, already mitigates their attack. So if now you decide to crank to go to 3 counters, you suddenly have 2 action points. You can attack with pistol twice. And you can crack Achilles and attack an additional time if you have additional resources. So now the opponent is forced, like, do I let 4 damage just leak? But then they attack you with a CNC and you throw 1 card in front, or let's say just 1 equipment. And you prevent the damage. So they don't leak damage. They took 4 damage from the pistol, and you're just down 1 item block. And then next turn, it repeats. And it repeats as long as they decide to do this, and you manage to get defensive items on the board, or until you banish something like, let's say, an induction chamber, because main board, I decided now to play 1 induction chamber to extend those pistol attacks with a go again. But in the sideboard, I run another induction chamber and 2 plasma purifiers. So that means you can, without anything else, you can attack 3 times for 4 damage. So that's 12 damage a turn. That's usually as much as people have average block values in their decks, like the defensive items. And you can do this every turn. Like, this is your late game plan into those defensive strategies. And like, they will not like it. You go down cards super fast. Like, I recently described this deck to a friend as like a 4-turn or 5-turn deck, because then you're out of cards. Like, you rush through your deck. But once you have this late game loop set up. And the cool thing is you will always, like, you can't boost over your Teklo Pounder like in OG Dash, because it will just come into play. You will always have this. And because you race through your deck so fast, you will see your Teklo Pounders every game, because you race through this deck, like, you will get all the value from your items, okay? Except the Teklo Pounders are your bottom 2 cards, whatever. And so there are these scenarios that sometimes come up. But you have this consistent game plan into defensive decks with this Induction Chamber and Plasma Purifier. Also true against like defensive Dories and things like this. So you have the defensive capabilities while presenting damage and while presenting on hits. And you might think, oh, my Boom Grenade doesn't hit, so it's not any value. No, your opponent is overblocking every turn you have a Boom Grenade out, so it is in a way passive value that you generated. And what I think is also there to hold the deck a little bit together, like I recently included again one Plasma Mainline. And Plasma Mainline and...
That one I think is maybe a little bit too greedy for my taste.
Yeah, I mean, I know you will probably not run it, but the amount of value I've seen from Plasma Mainline. So I recently included Plasma Mainline and Polarity Reversal scripts together again, because like having the option to have your Polarity Reversal script for 3 turns is absurd. The same thing for Boom Grenades. Like also every crank item with Plasma Mainline will stick around another turn cycle or give you just a free, absolutely free action point. That's why I really, really, really like this card. Also, getting a Plasma Mainline counter onto a Teklo Pounder early, like, let me tell you something, that is value. Like, it's insane. Or on a Dissipation Shield even. Like,
to me, my philosophy is just that if you have items that you boost off the top that do not have impact immediately onto the game, Blitz is such a short format that games only last 2 to 3 turns. Until someone is in full block mode or something, that I feel like Plasma Mainline is like a little bit too much, because you already have the Optical Monocle that also kind of don't do anything when they hit.
Yeah, I see your point. Agree to disagree. Like I've been testing this exact shot. So to round it up, there are many boost attacks like the classic 0 to 60 super hits and things like this. 2 twin drives. I don't know. I think I've played 20 to 30 games with this deck. The first card you boost away each game is a twin drive. It's confirmation bias, I know, but if you boost away your twin drives early, it's a good sign. You will win. Trust me. There is a conspiracy there. But jokes aside, there are more items that might surprise some people. Probably you, because you will not be running them. And that is Blue Medkit and Blue Fuel Injector. And Blue Fuel Injector, for me, the thing, I always felt bad when I boosted away a blue. Like I did run more blue attacks instead of those 2 items, because it doesn't do anything. And the Fuel Injector can really help you in the situations where you have to block with a card, you have to block with 2 cards and you're stuck with a 0 cost boost card in your hand, and you can't activate your Teklo core. So what you can do is you can just, like, for example, 0 to 60 boost, and then crack your Fuel Injector, get your resource, and then activate hard with your resource, end up with 2 resources available, and swing pistol twice if you get a crank item. So Fuel Injector can really bail you out of situations where sometimes you're stuck, you have awkward hands, you're down a resource, which can happen because this deck does run, like, for example, the 2 twin drives that do cost 2. So it can sometimes be a bit awkward, and Fuel Injector, for me at least, filled this niche of bailing you out sometimes, or adding another resource Also, in the very late game, if you don't have the cards left to boost, you can just put this under your deck, boost again. It's in the field. Put it down on the bottom again. Activate hard. It comes in. It's not infinite, but like you just by boosting this away, you net a resource. And I think that can enable your late game a little bit better. I really like that. And Medkit for me, like, it's one of my pet cards. I have to admit it. Like, when Bright Lights was spoiled, I really tried to make Medkit hit. I now know why it doesn't have Crank and why it's not an instant speed activation to put this under your deck and gain 2 life. Because I really tried to make this work. But I still believe in this deck it fills a similar role than Fuel Injector. Where you can in the late game put it to the bottom if you have extra action points to activate it again, or you can just use your extra action points that you generate by cranking to gain 2 life. So sometimes at the end of your turn, the deck is quite resource intensive. You have an action point left, but no more resources to shoot pistol in additional time. So what you can just do, use this extra action point to generate 2 life. And add another deck that you can banish in the late game with Foundry Heart. So Fuel Injector, Medkit for me are like the mid-range, let's call it the mid-range late game part of the game that just add value while you burn through your deck. And I've been liking them more than just, let's say, random blue 0 cost boost card. And of course there is microprocessor, optical monocle, and Tecto Pounder in the deck, because those are your best banishes basically. Like it doesn't happen, or it does happen quite often where you get an optical monocle and you just opt 5 times because you don't have an item on top. And that's completely fine. That's why it's in the deck, right? You opt 5 times, your next things, if you activate Foundry Heart, you're very likely to hit an item if you just got rid of 5 non-attacks. Or you can just ensure that together with your pitch, you have like a good ratio of attacks and non-attacks in your second cycle to not run out of crank items and things like this. So I really, really like the monocle. The problem is these cards all don't block. So when you don't get up your item...
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the downside of this deck, I want to say. Like, how does it look like when it's not functioning? Which is some of the saddest games of Flesh and Blood you will have ever played. I have had multiple games where I started my turn 0 hand was like against Reinar. I started with 3 items. He just immediately like smashed me for 12, and then I did nothing on my turn, and he smashed me for the rest of my life. And it feels bad. It feels real bad.
Yeah, this can happen. And for exactly this reason, a good friend of mine suggested Hope Merchant's Hood to bail you out of exactly these situations. And I see it, and it's been in the maybe board forever. But actually, I think Crown of Providence still can give you game in those situations. Like, okay, Reinar deals 12 damage. Okay, you start the game at 8. And sometimes it's enough to, like, let's say you have 2 or 3 defensive items in your hand, right? You can play those defensive items, 2 of them, and arsenal a card. You're at 8 life. If Reinar deals you 12 damage in the first turn, he's most likely not having an arsenal. So let's say you have a Dissolving Shield and a Mini Force Field or something like this in game, and you have your full equipment suite still, and you have a card in arsenal. Then you draw into a more functional hand. You can still block with Crown of Providence to cycle your arsenal to give you an additional card for next turn, which hopefully is like exactly what you need, a resource, a red boost card, whatever. You can activate Dissolving Shield twice and sack it for Adaptive Plating, which is just 5 block value, right? So you have now 7 blocks just on your items and your equipment for now, and you throw in a Foundry Heart, which is 9 block. So in order for Reinhardt to kill you, they need to deal your life total plus 9 damage. And you can get Reinhardt. You can always get Reinhardt. It's not a secret that Reinhardt is good in Blitz. But still, I think you have more game into Reinhardt than 4 intellect heroes, because you have insanely high rate equipment blocks with adaptive plating. And if you expect a lot of Reinhardt, I would probably add another adaptive plating on the leg slot. And you can slap back. Like, okay, then Reinhardt, let's say you're on 5 life, right? You have a 4-card hand. What this deck can do with a 4-card hand is actually sometimes insane. And
yeah, there's a reason the hero only has 3 intellect, right?
If Data Doll had 4 intellect, it would be like the most broken thing in FAB.
All right, I think we couldn't end on this note that if Data Doll had 4 intellect, it would be the most broken deck in FAB. I think that's a good statement to end.
Yeah. So again, we will put the deck link into the show notes if you want to give this deck a spin for Skirmish season. I genuinely believe that it is well positioned and it's a good deck.
So do I. I actually think it will. Many people will be surprised by how strong this Data Doll deck is.
Or we will be humbled, maybe.
Or we will be humbled. Maybe you will hear us next episode crying about how we got absolutely demolished in our skirmish.
Yeah, I think so too. So with that, please let us know what you think about our very first episode of the Last Ditch Effort podcast. You can find us on Twitter at ldfpod. That's ldfpod. And yeah, let us know what you want to hear more of, less of, what you thought about the controversial hot takes. Let us hear of your controversial hot takes. And yeah, we plan to release this podcast bi-weekly for now. So don't forget to follow us to know when we pitch a blue for Last Ditch Effort and go again. Thanks for tuning in, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks when it's time again for the LDF podcast.